Is service accommodation really worth the effort with everything that can go wrong? But also you can make a shed ton of money. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down what service accommodation is, how much money you can make, and the biggest pitfalls you need to look out for, and ultimately coming to my opinion of, is it worthwhile in the first place? Hey, my name is Jamie York, and if you're new to the YouTube channel, I've been investing in property for the better part of a decade right now. And if you're interested in business growth, mindset, and of course, property investment and how you can become wealthy through property, make sure to tap that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you're one of the first people to find out more. And hey, if you want to help me grow this channel, get it out to other people, it would really help me if you just smash the like button. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm and reach more people like you watching this right now. So let's jump straight in. First of all, what is SA? Serviced accommodation. You may have heard it called holiday lets. SA, commercial entities. What? Airbnb rentals, whatever it is. Okay, so what is the serviced accommodation? Well, normally when you've got a property, again, if you're new to this channel, you'll quickly work out I am not an artist. This is like a really sad house right now, isn't it? So this is a house that's going out there. Now, normally what would happen is you'll do it on a buy-to-let. So buy-to-let is obviously you are renting out the property as a whole on a monthly basis. Usually people sign up for a year or whatever it is. Then you've got something called HMO. There's loads of different strategies, by the way. And a HMO, what's going to happen is you are renting out the rooms in there on an individual basis, and you are paid by the month, so you pay by the room. Or you've got something called SA. And what SA is you are renting it out typically as the whole unit, but on a nightly charge, okay? So you are paying by the night. Now, an easy way to think of this is you're kind of like a hotel. Now, there's a lot of money to be made in this if you do it in the right way. I'm going to be breaking that down, but essentially, instead of having tenants, where you have a tenant and a tenant, you have a client or a customer that you're looking to take care of, okay? Very different legalities around it, which I'm not gonna be deep diving around it. It's not gonna be, this isn't a deep dive video. I could do that as another one, but you don't use an AST. It's more commercial arrangements that you are renting out on a nightly basis. Okay, so how much money can you make from your guests? So here's what we're doing when we're renting to a guest on a nightly basis. Well, there's actually quite a lot of money, and it really depends on your area. So in Leeds, let's say I've got a two-bed flat, and I'm going to deep dive around flats in a moment because you need to be very careful that they actually allow for it. A two-bed flat, I might get £800 a month. Okay, that's great. These are all gross figures, but that's per calendar month. But actually, I can rent that out at probably about £80 a night, very easily, okay? So if I had £80 a night, and then on a 30-day month, I'm gonna make £2,400. So what would you prefer? 2,400 or £800? Pretty obvious, right? Not really, actually. There's a lot to take account of. So let's break that down of why maybe that's not as good as it sounds. So first of all, most people that do rent to SA, where you are renting from the landlord and then service accommodation out, are actually doing it illegally. They're using the wrong contracts. They don't have the rights to do it. You need to, number one, you do not use an AST, use a commercial agreement with them, usually some form of corporate let agreement, but you need to look into the different types of agreements to help with that. Not going to be deep diving around it. You need to check with the mortgage company to see if they actually allow it. Most of them do not, unless they're on a commercial lending or a commercial loan. And you can get agreements, you can get consent to this. Number three is most of these are doing it in flats. It does work in flats, they're really great, especially in city centre locations, but a flat is a leasehold. What that means, just quickly, is if you have this block of flats here, that's a block of flats, obviously. What happens with a leasehold property is you might own that flat, but you do not own the ground that it is on. I know, right? So when you're a freeholder of a property, what happens is you own the ground rights. Okay, so the problem with a lease is you are essentially renting the ground that's underneath you, and then you pay a service charge for people to clean and upkeep the communal areas. Okay, now why is that important? Well, a lot of different reasons, but specifically for service accommodation is you have an agreement with the freeholder. Okay, so the freehold has a lease pack for the leaseholder, which is you or the owner of a property, and it will have terms in there. Now, what happens is in a majority of them, you will not be able to do service accommodation. And they specifically say you cannot holiday let it, or you cannot rent this out for on 4-day leases, which are short-term leases. Another video on that. So they actually ban it. And so a lot of the time, especially with people doing rent to SA, because for some reason it seems to attract a lot of newbie people with the promise of making that 2,400 woohoo coming in, and actually you're not understanding the contractual obligations that you've got. Therefore, you're paying fees, deposits, and then it is absolutely voided when the landlord goes, actually, you can't do this, okay? And there's a lot of letting agents as well that will agree this with you, but you legally can't do it unless you've got all of these boxes ticked with the right insurances in place. I'm not going to be going through the legalities of this, but the point is there's a lot, you know, have you got the right mortgage? Have you got the right AST? Can you do it in the flat? Have you got the right insurance? Because it is not the normal one. But there's also some costs that you need to be aware of, because if you get in that 2,400 versus that 800, what do you have on the 800? Well, the 800, you're going to have that mortgage costs, which, let's just say, for example, is 300 on that. What else do you have? Well, you're going to have your basic insurances, but those insurances aren't going to be that big of a deal. Let's call it 40 quid. Then you're going to have your management, which will be 10%, and then which will be 80 quid, and then maybe some voids. Let's call it voids and maintenance, another 80 quid. Okay, so these are not accurate numbers, obviously, but just to give you an idea. So you've got 160, 200, 300, that adds up to £500, which means your profit, give or take, is £300, which actually is probably there or thereabouts, but I haven't done those figures. So is it better on this side? Well, you bloody hope so, right? So if we're at 80 a night, technically on a 30-month, you are going to be renting it out. Okay, but first of all, voids. Do you think that this is likely going to be rented out 100% occupancy? Almost definitely not. There are ways to get to it, which I'll break down in a moment, the best ways to approach tenancies in this. More than likely not. And the reason for that is, let's say you get somebody to book for 3 days. Amazing, brilliant amount of money, right? And then someone wants to rent it for 2 days, but there's a day gap. How many people are you going to rent it for that day in between? Maybe it'll get filled, maybe it won't, but it's very specific and it's very unlikely. Also, you've got the cleaning and changeovers. You have to pay somebody to go in, and that on a moment, but it's not a 5-minute job. You have to change like all of the toiletries. You need to replenish them. You need to make sure the cutlery is still there. You need to make sure everything's clean, and you need to change all of the bedding and do a full changeover for them, okay? So it takes some time, you know, it's gonna be 4 or 5 hours of somebody's time. Getting that done, added expense as well. So let's be generous here, and well, it's not that generous, but let's say 70% occupancy is probably about right, okay? So at 70% occupancy, so we're taking account of the voids now, we're gonna do 70% of this, which, let's see if I can do this in my head. 10% is 240 times 7, 1,400, 280, 1,680. Maybe you should check that for me, Alex, and make sure 2,400 times 0.7 is that, so I'm not going off the wrong figures. So we're already at that, okay? So we're at 1,680. But what we're also gonna have is the mortgage costs on this. Say you own it. It is not gonna be the same as a buy-to-let mortgage. It's gonna be more expensive. It is, right, yeah? Oh, I feel like a wizard. So it's not gonna be much more expensive, but let's say 420 on this, okay? Then you've got management. I strongly advise not trying to do service accommodation if you're in a full-time job, or have an insane manager in place, okay? But really good managers typically are gonna be charging you about that 20% mark, okay? It's not 10%, because it's an absolute ball ache for them, okay? Now, there are people that charge less, but typically for a shit-hot local, and I would use a local on-the-ground service accommodation, you're looking at about 20%. So management, on that 20% on there, let's call it 1,700 to make it easy. Or actually, let's just do it right. So 168 times through is 336. This is really testing me. Okay, so 20% times that is 336, I think. And then what we're gonna have, insurance is gonna be higher. So probably more like, let's just call it 50 to make it easy. Now, here's where it really comes in, okay? So people don't really understand these two things that go wrong. First of all, you've got cleaning. Honestly, I would not factor in any less than about 200 a month for this, okay? You need to be paying a good cleaning company that is used to this. It's gonna be about £10 or more an hour, dependent on where you're at. Each changeover is gonna take a good few hours. So even if you said, I'm going to be really nice here and say 200 for the month, okay, for cleaning and turnaround. It ain't going to happen. It's going to be more, but let's say 200. Now, the two big things that people forget. Number one, VAT. Because you're in hospitality, there is a big fee in that, okay? It's VAT. Now, if you've only got, you have to be past 85,000 a year in what you're getting in. But once you have VAT, how many hotels have you seen go, oh, it's 100 a night? And then you go, okay, great, 100 a night. Oh, and your VAT, 120. No, doesn't happen. They suffer the cost within that, okay? So when you're going out there and you're basing your margins on that £80 a night, you're not getting £80 a night. You're getting whatever it is, £65 a night. Give or take, okay? And that's something to take factor in. What you do have, and I'm not even gonna do the figures on here, you have something called TOMS, okay, which is your tour operators profits, whatever it is, sorry, M's, margins, tour operator margins, which is basically helping out hospitality like ourselves, and you get a reduced rate on there. So I'm not even gonna factor in VAT, but look into it. There are allowances on there once you get to a certain size, but 85 grand, you need to be charging VAT, but there are tour operation margins, TOMs to be looking out of. Blah. Moving on, okay, now the big one on here, well actually there's two. One is within that management, you want to be looking at the fees of the software that you're using. So most people use booking.com and Airbnb. They charge you about 15%. Okay, but if you've got a good management agent in place, what they should be doing is, especially if you've got a few in the area, is setting up some sort of page for you, like a website, very basic, so that when you're getting these customers in, you're getting repeat customers in, okay? So you're getting them off of the portals so that ultimately they're gonna make more money. Because otherwise you don't want to be paying them 20% and then another 15%. So again, I'm not gonna take account of it, even though these are costs that you need to take account of. Now, the big one, and this is a really big one that people don't seem to think about. Who rents by the night? Okay, now, a lot of people, but two types that you need to be a little bit worried about. Number one, partiers. I have heard horror stories of people that have spent like 10 grand kitting out their beautiful service accommodation with a you know, big screen TV, lovely cutlery, all of that sort of thing, and then the house has been absolutely trashed. I mean, to the point where they've had to go in and spend thousands after, okay? So I'd be really clear in your rules. Make sure you've got ID. Make sure you're having a phone call with them and saying to them, look, especially like, look, it's a bit harsh, but if they're like 25 to 35, people like me, if I was staying there on like a Saturday night for one night and there's stuff around that, you know, it could be, I'd be having a chat with me and just saying, look, just so you know, we get a lot of partiers, we're having neighbours check on them, we've had the police on call, just want to make sure you're not looking to do that. Now, can you physically stop it happening? No. But it's good to prepare for that and factor that in. Is it will happen. I've heard of people it not happening for years. I've heard of it happening in the first week of owning it, which is horrible. The next thing is, who else rents by the night? Don't know how to say this nicely, but prostitutes, okay, which I don't really care about. It's like, look, if you're in there, you're in there, you do what you want, but something to factor in for the neighborhood potentially. If you're in a block of flats and there are people frequenting there through the night, you need to make a call for yourself on what you want to do for it. Personally, you know, it is what it is, but you need to factor in the location that it's at, because obviously police getting called and things like that. The hassles of property people don't tend to talk about. But like I said, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear at times. So even if we didn't even factor in those costs, I'm more just telling you, let's break down what you're actually likely going to be making from this profit, okay? And I guarantee there's more that you want to take account of in this. So we've got 1,680 minus the 420, so we're at 1,260. Let's go take that one off. That's actually 250, so we're at £1,010. And then we're at £674. Is that right, Alex? 674. I'm feeling like a wizard today. Watch you comment and tell me I've got it wrong. £674. Again, I actually think it will be lower than that, by the way. Worth just saying, but 674 versus 300. So you are making over double in this scenario. So I'm going to break down how you can maximize this and then jump into, is it worth it in the first place? Okay, so I want to cover three more things. So I mentioned about making it as easy as possible and actually not doing this if you're a full-time job. And the reason why I wouldn't do it in a full-time job is, as a strategy, it's quite reactive to things that go on. So it's not saying there's not proactive measures, because you can't just put it on booking.com and Airbnb and just go, money is flowing in. There's booking, there's a meet and greet that you've got to do. What if they go there and then there's an issue, you need to go out there? What if they say, look, that I can't sleep on this bed, like it's this, it's that, and I'm going to leave a complaint? How do you react to that? Okay, because a lot of your Airbnb business is going to be operated through Airbnb and booking.com and based on the reviews. So you need to think about other ways to monetize on that. So it is a job, okay? Unless you have a shit hot manager in there, please do not try and do this without external help, and factor in those management costs. Okay, you need to do that. Otherwise you are getting another job, and I just cannot see a way that this works without having help, either hiring somebody, getting some admin support, or having somebody managing it for you, okay? So it is very reactive, and you just need to remember that. So if you're not relying on Airbnb, because it's not as simple as that, or booking.com, where can you actually go? So my recommendation, there's things like Silver Door and other websites like that that link with direct contracts where you're paying less, getting higher quality tenants for longer term, and you can, okay, there are contractors that will book it for 3 months on a nightly basis. Those are the gold, and you can get those on Silver Door, but you do need a certain amount of properties. So probably not when you're beginning, okay? A good one that I like is, and looking at the demand in the area, because it is very demand specific and location specific, is I will go full stalker mode to hotels in the area that are likely to be having the sort of people, okay? So Premier Inn, Holiday Inn, etc. I'm not going to go through a load of hotels, but you get my point. I'm not talking about the Marriott and stuff like that. And I will go midweek. Why am I going to go midweek? Why would I go do that? Well, I'm going to go look in the car park. Okay, now bear with me, because I realise how weird this is probably sounding. Now, when I go into the car park, if it's a great area for contractors, guess what I'm going to see? Van after van after van after van. Like, and there are some areas, so I used to go down to Peterborough quite a lot, where if you try and book in on a Thursday, You cannot get it. You have to book weeks in advance because the whole hotel is fully occupied. And you go in the car park and there's these vans parked across 4 bays. If you drive a van, I'm not having a go at you. Yes, I am. Stop doing that. Midweek, absolutely packed out. Now, what you could do is a lot of those vans, I was about to draw a van, I'm not going to do it. On the side of those vans, what do they have? Vehicle signage. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around to every single van and I'll put a leaflet in or a card saying, hey, are you fed up of staying at a hotel? We've got rates, got a flat in the area where you can stay with your mates, have drinks, have dinner, and it will be cheaper. Let me know if you want me to have a chat with your boss about sorting this out. And I'll put those cards in very sort of chilled out and casual. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to call those companies and I'll say, hey, do you have a department that deals with the relocation and location of your workers when they're in a new area? So what they'll have is likely when they're a big contract, they will have somebody in charge of accommodation and location. Okay, so I'd be talking to those people and just saying, hey, look, I've got these properties where you're going to need them for what? Monday night through Thursday night? And where people come in for the 5 days a week and you need to pay for their accommodation, right? Great. At the moment, what's your budget? Well, if they're in the Premier Inn, where I know they're going to pay like £70 a night per person. Okay. Well, in your service accommodation, if you've got a 2-bed and maybe a pull-out bed, that's 3 people. Hey, what if I said per person I can house them at about £30 a night and they're going to be with their mates and your bill's going to be cheaper because they're not eating and drinking out every night. They can do a weekly shop, and actually what I can do is I can facilitate that weekly shop. So if they let me know what they want each week, you have their allowance, I will arrange that shop for them and have the food waiting there in the apartment. Okay, think about the value first, the service level here. But it's worth doing that because with service accommodation, your big void periods are going to be midweek because the weekends is pretty easy in hospitality, okay? So personally, I'd go contractors here. So making sure you've got that area, and then hospitality or the typical hospitality on the weekends. So the big question is this worth it in the first place? So it really does depend, and SA more than anything is very much location specific. So city centre locations, is it near anything? Are there theatres nearby? Milton Keynes is really good for like the races and things like that, same as Cheltenham, but they're very much based around those. So if they are in those areas, you want to be factoring that in and get your calendar worked out because you want to increase your rates on them. If it's things like the Yorkshire Dales, you can in a 3-month period, in the summer period, make just as much money profit from service accommodation than you could in a 12-month period from buy to let. So maybe you want to weigh those up where you go, you know what, actually, why don't I get a 6 to 9 month tenant in the periods where it's not, and obviously you need to do some work to find those people, and then in the summer SA out the property and things like that, because you can make a lot of money. But it's very area dependent. You need to know the demographic that you're going after. Is it hospitality, partiers, is it contractors? And you need to understand the added management that's going in place. So is it worth it? In my opinion, I'd say 80% of the time, it's a no from me, okay? I am boring, okay? I like simple, vanilla stuff that is gonna make me a hell of a load of money over the long term. I like to set and forget things, and I've got a fairly large buy-to-let portfolio. Most of it, I barely hear anything from. Of course, there's issues that come up, but with these other strategies like that, honestly, after everything, the time implication, I genuinely believe on the most part you are making around the same money, maybe a little bit more, in some cases less. But I very much prefer keeping it simple. I've got a business there, I do deal packaging, and I package on deals and get fees proactively into my pocket. And I mostly, 90% of the time, will use that to buy buy-to-let properties, blocks of flats, maybe some commercial conversion, but even then it will go into that buy-to-let. But hey, I'm a pretty boring, risk-averse investor, and buy-to-lets for me are the foundation of everything in a portfolio. That's not to say I wouldn't look at service accommodation in certain properties, but I certainly wouldn't make it the core of what I'm doing, especially with hotels getting stressed out and it can all go off on a light switch. So hopefully that's been valuable. That's just my opinion at the end, but I've gone through a load of info where you can make your own decisions. Ultimately, you will make money if you do this in the right way. Just consider all of the other opportunities before diving in to something, especially with the right without the right education. And I strongly suggest, especially around service accommodation, get educated about this. I do not teach service accommodation, so no point asking me if I can do it, but I can certainly recommend people that I think are great at this if you want to go down that route. So I hope you got value from that. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And again, it really does help me reach more people like you. I want to help people accelerate to the next level. If you just smash that like button, leave a comment, let me know what you thought about this, and I'll see you in the next video.